Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. Here it is, Demetrius with Josh Burble. How you doing, Josh?
I'm great, man.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
so you went with the podcast.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
I was gonna, I never know what to call our podcast. So
Yeah.
if our podcast it is.
Yeah.
So we'll get started. It's good to talk to everybody. And I've gotten some emails from some of the listeners and some Facebook. It's tough. Sometimes I get Facebook messages, and I'm not always the best because it's tough. I do these boot camps and I'm tied up for a few days, and then I don't always respond within 24 hours. So fair warning, I don't always respond within 24 hours, but they mean a lot to me. Don't think that because I'm training somebody, trust me, if you guys come out and train with me, it'll be your turn to have my undivided attention. But it means a lot. So I really thank everybody that's reached out to me and to Josh. So, but it's good to be back. How you doing, Josh?
It's good. Yeah, things are good, man.
Cool. That's deep. All right. So what's on our docket today? So we've got some good stuff. We are going to kick it off with a couple brief updates. I want to give a few updates on my boot camps so that you guys know what is available, what's changing, what to do. And then we're going to tackle, so here's our lineup. We've got a listener question. So that's cool. And then we're going to talk, oh my gosh, I have avoided this for 2.5 years. So if this is your first Queued Up podcast network boot camp, then you're in for a treat, because I have avoided this topic for 2.5 years because I didn't feel it was safe for me to even start this conversation. What are we going to talk about, Josh? What are we talking about?
Handicaps in pool.
I couldn't even say it. No, I'm just kidding. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at it from a couple different angles, though. We're going to try to look at some of the pros and cons of handicaps. We're going to explore our personal feelings about handicaps. And then we're going to look at it and see where some things are. So there's some nuances of how handicaps play out in competition that not everybody might see. And so we're just going to talk a little bit about it. Then we actually have another listener question at the end, which I think is going to be better at the end after having explored because it doesn't quite relate, but it overlaps some of the same themes with handicaps. So that should be fun. Oh, and then you had a little something that you haven't even told me about yet. You haven't told me what it is. You've got a mystery segment.
A mystery segment? You're talking about the
the
e-bike thing?
Yeah, all you said is something about e-bikes.
Yeah, teaser, e-bikes. We're going to talk about e-bikes.
Okay, so we got the mystery segment. I think, yeah. Excellent. So why don't we start? And do you want to read the listener question this week? Why don't you go ahead?
This whole thing?
Yeah. Well, let's see
right.
here. Maybe we just start from right there.
From this to me?
No. From I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is you got this through AZ Billiards.
AZ Billiards. Shout out to the peeps on AZ.
I think it is a relatively non-controversial idea that a successful or ideal pool stroke is executed unconsciously. That is to say, a player relies on habits and procedures they have already adopted, and they are not thinking, italicized, about them in the heat of battle, parentheses. Until recently, I have thought that the point at which a player begins to trust his process is right before he begins his final backstroke. Now I think this is too late. To me, the process of a successful shot starts while you are standing up, visualizing the successful outcome, aiming, etc. Because the process begins here, standing up, I think this may be the point at which someone needs to give way to their procedures or their unconscious. I think I've been waiting too long to turn off my brain. Carried to its logical conclusion, it would seem to me that if someone keeps their procedure the same for each shot, the time between when they decide to drop onto the shot and when they strike the cue ball should be relatively constant, or at least very similar. What do you think about this? I think the physical routine of getting onto the shot gets a lot of attention, maybe rightly so, but the mental routine, I think it gets less attention. What are your thoughts on this? College Dave.
Yeah. So Dave, and unless I'm horrendously mistaken, Dave is actually, I met Dave at Derby this year, and he's a heck of a player. He's going to be coming out and training here in I was going to say a couple of weeks. I think it might be like a month or two. Probably 2 months. I don't even really know, but in the next couple of months, we're going to be getting together at a pool table. So that'll be fun. So thanks for the question, College Dave. All right. So basically, I think the question has to do with, you know, when should you go? Like you're thinking at the table, but then at some point you got to like shoot. And when does that shift happen where you try to go into flow, like unconscious flow? I think that's what he's asking.
Okay.
What do you think?
I like what he's saying here about when you're standing up looking at it. I think the way I've been thinking about that, like playing, I think that the shot gets visualized, and then there's subconscious microanalysis that happens when you get down. But you're sort of, I think, unless I'm misunderstanding what he's saying or whatever, I think that my brain starts going off as I'm bending down to the shot. Like I think all my calculations and everything, including an actual visualization of where I'm hitting the cue ball, how the cue ball is going to react, where it's going to end up, everything happens while I'm standing. And then as I bend down, the brain goes off and it becomes more subconscious. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, yeah.
That's what I've been.
And I think that
thinking.
he's saying that he used to do it a little later, like he would be down on the shot, and then he would be then he'd be like, okay, now I got to just feel it from here. And I think so, yeah. And I've talked about this maybe, but just I feel pretty strongly about this one. So I have you could say that pre-shot routine applies to a few things. He mentioned that a lot of people focus on the way they physically get on the ball, and that gets a lot of attention, but that the mental routine like gets less attention. I 100% agree with this, and I've said this a lot of times. I actually think if there's a more important piece of the pre-shot routine, it is the mental side, not the physical, checklist. So the way it works for me is this: you do your thinking, standing up away from the table, and then you do your shooting down in stance at the table. And in between, what the pre-shot is really about, it's about the transfer from the thinking stage to the shooting stage. And it's also from the transfer, I guess what he'd say, of course, is physically you're going from standing up to getting on the shot. And there's a bunch of stuff that has to be done right about where your foot is and how you step and how you bend and where your vision center and all this. But here's the thing is that if you play pool, well, you know where Josh and I stand on fundamentals, like get down on the ball and shoot it in the hole. So basically for me, I call that the trigger. And I believe it's like during this pre-shot, what's the most important things to me is that you build a rhythm where you've trained your brain like a dog to go to sleep every time you execute your trigger. And so different players have different triggers. Some players use an air stroke. So they're walking around looking at the shot, and then also they do like the vertical air stroke and get down on the ball. And like they do it the same, and that's their trigger. And that when you see a guy like that watching, the table, as soon as they do that air stroke, you can just see them kind of like commit and start getting on the ball. The European players, they sometimes kind of pose with like their cue diagonal in front of their chest or in front of their body, and they're kind of holding both their hands together at right where the wrap ends. They kind of touch their hands together and tilt their cue diagonally and address the table. So they might be moving quickly around the table. And then there'll be this moment where they look at the ball and kind of like come to a standstill and do the same thing. And then they drop and step into the shot. Like you'll see Federer do that. Niels does that. Saming Chan, just to name a few I can think of offhand. So what, and Billy Thorpe, some people, Billy Thorpe, Hunter Lombardo, or John Mora, I can't remember all of their pre-shots, and some of them have evolved, but some people will set the chalk down. So they'll be chalking their cue and then looking at the shot, chalking their cue. And then as soon as they're good, they snap the chalk down on the table and get down on their shot. And so those are three examples of like triggers where people that do things the same way every time, where it's almost like that's their suggestion, their hypnotic suggestion to their brain that, okay, I'm good. Now we can just go to sleep. And so, and it's when you watch that, it really feels fluid and rhythmic. And I think that that's a pretty important thing, is being, it keeps you committed to the shot. It keeps you so that you're not thinking while you're down on the shot, and you have a clear plan of what to do. And it's, I think it helps all that. And it makes sure you're not thinking during the shot about, switching tip positions or how hard should I hit it or how far should I go on this shot and all these different things. So, okay. What do you think about the trigger idea or the rhythm idea? I mean, we've probably talked about this just between us.
Yeah, we have. Like, I'm thinking, I'm shooting. Like I did that for a while because I didn't really have a pre-shot routine. And every time I tried to get one, it just absolutely murdered me. I just couldn't do it. But you had talked to me about, that, and that's something that I not came up with, but I followed through with, or I used as a mantra, just practice that a little bit while I was playing. So yeah. Yep. I just think my takeaway from this conversation is I've spent a lot of time thinking about how am I prepared to deliver my cue accurately and to the best of my ability. And it is to be standing and planning and visualizing, and then not having doubts about that. So if I can get into a spot where I can actually see what I'm trying to do and I'm comfortable and I believe I can execute that shot, then I'm good to go. And the result is usually pretty good. So I don't know what triggers there necessarily down, but the act of bending down, like I think like getting on the shot.
And I think that, when I work with people, this is something I definitely work on because what I've seen with pre-shots is, there's people that aren't consistent. It doesn't break down when they're feeling good and they're comfortable. It breaks down when they're not comfortable and they're under pressure. And then their rhythm changes and their accuracy changes and their decision making gets less clear. So to me, a pre-shot that works most of the time is might as well not do it at all, because if it doesn't carry you through when you're feeling the worst, then it's like, you know what I mean? That's when it breaks down. So when I work with people though, there's so much stuff out there. There's so many things where people have these checklists of what they're going to do with a shot. So to boil it down really, really simple, I just call it the waltz, where there's 3 rhythmic pieces. And the first part is the pre-shot trigger. So you're walking around the table, and then when you're good, you kind of do your trigger, you do your air stroke or you do your address. And then you get down to the ball and you lock in your aim and tip, and you get your practice stroke so that your aim and tip are in the right spot. And then you get real good there, and you go ahead and pause next to the cue ball. And that's your second checkpoint, is that pause at the cue ball. And then from there, it's a nice, smooth, accelerating swing. So it's like pre-shot, cue ball, pause, swing, trigger, pause at cue ball, swing, trigger, pause at cue ball, swing, trigger, pause at cue ball, swing. And for people, even quick players, and I've seen this, it's like if you work in just those little checkpoints, and it's not about time, it's just about working in those little checkpoints, trigger when you're committed to the shot standing up, cue ball, pause, when your tip's right at the cue ball, when you're kind of locked in on the shots, getting down, and then a nice smooth swing. That rhythm is really smooth. And instead of telling people to try to, manage 20 steps in different phases of the shot, which is like, good luck with that. Mm-hmm. It's like, this is something where people could just count it out. They could be like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and they can start feeling the rhythm right away and getting into it. And then I had one person that was kind of funny. That was, sometimes he'd skip one of the steps, and I'd be like, hey man, I'm asking you to count to 3. Like, I'm not asking for anything crazy. I'm asking you to count to 5. Nothing ridiculous like that. Like, we're going to 3 here. Yeah. But it's actually really cool. And the funny part, I didn't even tell you this. Like, when we started doing a particular drill, it was a 15-ball drill. And when he first started it, it was like 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. Like, the number of balls he was running was like, he couldn't get past 2 or 3. And there was a lot of misses. And then when he started getting into this rhythm, I don't think he ran the table, but it was like a really good 13-ball run in this drill. Mm-hmm. It was not an easy drill for him. Yeah. And so it was like, all of a sudden it came together, and it was like, boom. I mean, it's just, it's like when the magic guy shifts into 3D, and I was like, jumps out at you. Yeah. So anyway, that's my advice about that, would be the 3-part rhythm. Keep it simple. Yeah. But then a word of warning about this. The problem and the irony of all this is that our goal is to try to minimize brain activity. And so you have to be careful about like overthinking how we try to stop thinking, because it's like, there's a lot of thoughts in this, and this is good conversation, but like,
I ran into that, Dan.
Tell me,
like I ran into it. Like, you were trying to help me with a pre-shot routine, and it just got real clunky, and it got real lost in it, and it just killed me. It just made pool not fun for me. And I was like, well, if this is the way pool's played, then I guess I'm just not interested in playing this way, at least with where I was at in my life at that time or whatever. That's it. Like, some people, I think, Europeans or certain American players, they have very, very powerful narratives where they're just driven to perfectionistically get this mechanical process down. And for me, I'm not that way. I'm not that way with fundamentals. I'm not that way with the game. I'm a hand-eye coordination guy and kind of a feel guy. And so for me, it doesn't speak to me to, and I would run into what you were just talking about, like where I tried to get too mechanical or too, trying to shut off my brain too intentionally. And it didn't work for me. Now I know that people that doesn't work for everybody. The way that I do it doesn't work for everybody. So but I can speak to what you're saying because it doesn't work for me. But there are players I could see that are more mechanical, more analytical, more engineer type thinkers, like that could work perfect for them, and I have done some things where I've read the inner game of golf and, back hit and things. I've tried that at certain times to get into the self one, self two stuff, but in general, it can be trappy for people that are a little bit more feely. It can be trappy to get into
I remember that because that was probably 4 years ago or so, because it was like turning stone of like 2018. I remember we were talking about it. And that was before I was really coaching, right? That was like, so back then I was talking about the trigger, and I think that's probably why I've evolved, because I'm a minimum necessary force kind of guy. Like the less we mess with stuff, the better. And I really believe pool is not like sculpting where you're assembling more and more crap. It's like, no, it's about whittling. It's taking out everything you can, except for the very few minimalistic structures that we need to keep our game flowing smoothly. So adding some big welded piece onto your game is not going to work, but like whittling stuff away can be better. And so instead of adding a pre-shot, it's more like eliminating the tendency to jump down at a shot without being committed. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's we're not adding stuff, we're taking stuff out.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people too, with it's always less. It's always less. It's always less. The break shot is less than you think. It's every hard shot, the draw shots are less than you think. Like everything is, as you get really deep in this game, the answer is never. I've never once have I had something not working for a while, and then I'm like, oh, I just really needed to jam my cue a lot harder at that. Now it works. It's like almost never has that ever been the answer.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with pre-shot. So absolutely right. And that's why I've really gone to this waltz, because to me, it's like I've found like what are the minimum things that we can do that kind of help people through that path without trying to be like adding big clunky parts to their game. And that's why these long checklists and stuff about how to step into shots and now is what time. So that's why when we're getting to like thinking about all this stuff, it's like turning your brain off, like telling yourself to turn off your brain is a weird thing, so in the end, there's something else too, which is you should be minimizing brain activity even while you're thinking at the table, because it's like think as quietly as possible and then get even quieter when you get down to the ball, and the less heavy thoughts the better. And I'm an analytical player, and I think a lot at the table, but I try to think quietly, softly. And I understand that I wouldn't say it's the enemy, but it's certainly not the solution to pool is being really smart and thinking really, using a bunch of stuff, you don't want to be like tickled pink with your own analytical prowess where you're like, now I'm going to figure out which side of the ball I want to be on because I'm a thinking player. It's like, yeah, good luck with that. Like you just have to kind of be like kind of quiet and humble and try to think as minimal as possible, and then get even quieter when you get down the ball. So
right on.
I could beat anybody in here. Okay. Never mind.
There's a guy that we know, and he stood up in a pool room full of people at a tournament. He's like, I will play anybody in here. Yeah, kind of a nasally voice. It was funny.
All right. So, and why don't we? Oh, I've got to do a quick. This is really quick. MN Pool boot camp. So 3-day boot camps I run here. If you haven't heard about them, check out my website. MN like Minnesota, mnpoolbootcamp.com. I've got to edit my website because another thank you for all the people that have come to see me and all the people that have called me and reached out to come see me. I am blown away. I don't know what to say, but as a result, I am actually booked for 2022. And so this is incredible. I added, I guess it's my third year in business and good things have happened, but I added a calendar like a couple months ago to my website because it was starting to get so, I wanted to kind of give people some notice as to when my next available was so that people could, not get too emotionally invested until they kind of saw when, make sure the schedule could fit. But then even since the calendar was added, now I've booked out for the year. And so now I'm concerned, I don't want people getting, disappointed. I guess I don't have anything immediate available. So what my plan is, and I'm telling everyone, I'm going to update my website shortly, and I'm going to make some adjustments for 2023. I'm going to start getting into some 2-on-1s, which I think are going to help in a couple ways. It's going to make my session available to people at a lower price point if they're willing to share the session with one other person, which I think is a phenomenal size. 2-on-1's a great size. You get plenty of one-on-one time, but you also can learn so much watching somebody else have breakthroughs or struggles with the things that you're going through. It's almost like it's a really like bonding, lifelong kind of cool experience. So anyway, and that's going to make things available to people at a little bit lower price point, and it's going to help with demand a little bit. So I'm going to be doing some 2-on-1s. I'm also going to be doing a few smaller groups as well. So I'm going to try to do some things to help meet demand. But what I'm going to do is I'm not opening up any spots on my calendar yet for 2023 because it's just a little ways ahead. And Josh and I are working at a club, and we've got some stuff that we need to have. I just need some resolution on a couple of things before I can start committing to my, being, 6 to 18 month out schedule. But in the next few months, I'm going to be opening up 2023, and I'll have some different options than what you see on my website at this current time. So I should have those updates done, somewhere in the next 2 to 4 weeks. Then for now, if anybody's interested, then feel free to email me, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to be kind of taking like a waiting list. So if people email me and want to be at first contact as far as 2023 goes, whether it's 2-3 months out when I do open up some new spots, people that have emailed me and expressed interest are going to be on a waiting list. You guys will be at the top. So I won't even make those spots public. I'll reach out to everybody on my waiting list first to show them what's available and see if we can get those guys scheduled first, and just do that. So anyway, that's where I'm at, and a little update. So I'm sure I'll have more to come on that, but that's where I'm at. So thanks again. My goal is simple. I want to help anybody that's passionate about pool that wants to work with me. I want to help, and so things will keep adjusting as I find ways to do that. But okay.
And you're awesome at helping people. So that's it,
Thanks,
man.
Josh.
Yeah. I was going to do something about coaching and with my kid and seeing the difference. And so I'll hit it in like 1 minute here. So my wife is a therapist, right? Marriage and family. So she sees a lot of marriage issues. So she'll come home once in a while and she'll just be like, hey, thank you. Just thank you for not doing XYZ awful thing that she hears about in her work. And I was around my kid, and he's playing baseball and he's playing hockey, and I'm seeing coaching, and I just think about Dem a lot when I see coaching, and I just think, hey, thanks, Demi. Thanks for being such an awesome coach, man. Like I see, and these guys are volunteers, and I get it, and they're doing the best they can and stuff, but and I'm not trying to dog out my kids' coaching by any stretch. I appreciate it, and whatever. It's like you see the difference, right? And so when I see the way you are with how you help people and how much you care and how much you give to your students and to people that are checking in with you, and it's awesome, man. And it's just great, because I've seen the other side of it, but I see your side of it too, where I watch you and how you interact with your students and what you've helped me with over the 10-15 years we've been hanging around, and it's just awesome, man. So I would just encourage anybody to if they check in with Demi and they feel like they're a good fit, to like, you will not be disappointed. He is a witch. He's just magical, and it's very, very, very extraordinary what you do with students and people. So that's it.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you very much. And again, thanks to everybody. Okay, if it gets any more loving in here, I need to go like use some of that. You know what? When I bought paper towels last time, I got the brawny paper towels because they had the big lumberjack
Yeah,
on them. And
yeah,
I told
yeah.
my kids, I'm like, some once in a while, like right now, I'm gonna go peel a brawny paper towel because sometimes you need something a little bit, Anyway, okay, so all right, um,
So what was next?
we're gonna get into handicaps. This is no e-bike. We better do
Okay, we'll
e-bike.
do the
If we
e-bike
don't do
thing.
that now, we're never gonna do it.
Okay,
So
okay.
e-bike.
So
I
here's
want
the
the mystery segment.
here's Okay, here's the e-bike situation. This was such a good learning experience for me, Demi. I realized that I can just be an absolutely raging asshole. And e-bikes made me realize that because e-bikes have been around what, 3-4 years, something like that, 5 years.
I've only
maybe.
been finding out about them the last couple of
Last
years.
couple of years, they've really taken off in the last couple of years. But like, I'm always sneering at people with e-bikes, because I'm like, oh, why even have a bike?
So just in case
Pedal
not everybody
assist.
knows, why don't you tell?
It's an electric pedal assist bike.
So
it's a bicycle.
It's not a
It's not a
motorcycle.
moped. It's not a motorcycle.
It's not a bike. It does pedal assist. So how for somebody that's I was gonna try to backhand you, but no, for somebody that has never used an e-bike, what exactly? How does it assist?
Well, it's just there's an electric motor on it, and it just helps you pedal the bike.
Oh, so as you pedal, it's like reduces the resistance.
Exactly.
Oh.
Yes. We can put this works great with handicaps too.
Oh my goodness.
I'm rubbing my hands together right now if you can't hear it. So I look at e-bikes, and I've just always looked at them just sneering, like, because okay, so I like cardiovascular work. I run really far at times, and I run often, and sometimes I'll run and then I'll bike, and in the same day and shit. And it's like, so, and my brother was into biking, like he got me into biking. So now I own a couple bikes. I own like a fat tire, and I own a gravel bike. And now I'm not into biking, but I mean, I bike for the exercise basically. And and I would see e-bikes in pedal assist, and I see people riding them, and I'm like, why even have it? Like, what are you doing? Like, why,
Yeah.
It's so for the last 2-3 years, all I've done is like look down and sneer at people with e-bikes. And then I realized the other day, what an asshole I am, because I realized, wait a minute, not everybody is riding a bike to like conquer some sort of fitness goal, or to like prove something to themselves, or to like hit some sort of calorie deficit or whatever.
It's like you like, without even thinking about it, you just projected a universal narrative on everybody that bikes is doing it for fitness and personal challenge, and then they just all happen to be cheaters.
Yeah. So then it took all that away. It took all that personal challenge and everything away. So that I'm just like, I'm monkey tilted by e-bikes for years, for the last couple of years. And then finally, Irene and I were going rafting for her birthday down in Cannon Falls. And we're going to get on the raft, and we're walking to the raft thing. And this guy comes pedaling by on his e-bike, and he's just smiling and happy. And I started sneering, and then I stopped myself, and I thought,
he's having fun.
He's having fun. It's a beautiful day. Like, there's literally, he could be looking at the trees and being out in nature. There's so many other
motorcycle for fun.
Yeah, exactly. Like it sounds, I'm so stupid to even talk about this, but
it's really interesting.
It's just so funny, because I was like, it finally occurred to me after years and years of feeling like that like I just called myself on, and I'm like, what an asshole. Like, there's a world out there where you can do something without trying to crush. And so I thought it related to pool, Demi, because I just thought, what's my e-bike and pool? Like, how are we e-biking pool? Like, how are we looking at pool in that way? Where like, for me, like, how am I taking pool and like strangling the joy out of it and making it all about what I accomplish, or my Fargo rate, or this or that or the other thing? It's like, can I just play pool like people e-bike? I can at times, yes, and I'm getting more to that in my life, and that's where my path is right now. I'm more of an e-biker with pool than I am an ultra marathoner with pool. So I just, it all sort of like hit me, and I thought about you, and I thought about the podcast, and I just wanted to bring it up.
That's where I kind of remember, because there is something circular. Like, in the beginning, when we first start playing pool, like, nobody gets the pool bug the moment they hit their first pool ball. I shouldn't say that. Most people go through a phase where they're like learning to make the bridge and hitting open balls, and it's hard to get hooked on the game when you can't even form a bridge. So it's like most people, I've heard stories of people that walk by and look into a building and see pool balls hit, like, ooh, that's for me. But like most people, I think, have a recreational phase where you learn how to hit balls around. And so you're first introduced to the physical game, and you play it at such a low level that there's just not a lot of joy to be had other than just laughing around and having fun with your buddies and watching balls bounce around. And then somewhere along the lines, a couple things happen. You develop just enough skill to start to see down the road of what pool could look like and what skills could be developed and how it can look and how these interesting challenges can be, skills can be developed to overcome them. And at the same time, you start hanging out with other people, usually the people that demonstrate those skills, and you learn that there's this other world of like, there's this pool journey where you can develop skills so that you can physically excel, but that there's also this journey through this pool hierarchy of like self-improvement, and there's great players that are getting respect and admiration from other players, and there's people that are winners, and there's people that are dominant, and there's people that are like werewolves in Londoning their way around.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's both like this like, wow, you can actually like be somebody by playing this game, and you can develop skills that are really like, this game is far deeper than I thought it was. And so as people get exposed to those worlds, they can kind of lose they can get the bug, and they go from being kind of recreational players that are just playing to have a night off and hang out with their buddies or whatever, something to do once in a while, and they start becoming like real amateur players, like where they have an amateur career. They start pursuing growth, and then you can get so far down that road that you can forget what the game was when you first played it. And so that's where, like, I know that the e-bikes, like when I look at players that are like guys that are just playing recreationally, I don't look at it like, oh, you guys are fish, you guys can't play at all. Like, I don't think about it like that. I'm just like, oh, these guys are enjoying the game in a totally different way than I do. But not the way I play pool, but I'm glad they are having a good experience with it. Like, so I guess that would be like first of all, that would be like the e-bike thing would be like watching people at a pool hall that are drinking beers and joking around with their buddies, and two people that don't know anything teaching each other how to play. And actually, you should hold the cube like this, and you watch how he's coaching, like, that's
the bunny ears.
But it's like they're having fun with it, And
yeah, it's funny because when I think about that situation, I don't sneer at those guys. Like, I'm excited for them, and I encourage them, and I'm glad that they're playing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, but the e-bike thing and with pool, even when you were just talking there, Demi, I just thought about I saw The Color of Money, and I immediately wanted to play and fell in love with the game and was like, that's what I'm going to do. And ever since I've started playing, whether it's pool or golf or anything fitness related, it's all been like strangle. It's just like, it's just, I don't know, man. So
it's like, you have the e-bike. Can you set the e-bike on reverse to where it adds extra resistance to every pedal?
Yeah,
Josh
exactly.
will just do that.
yeah, exactly. Well, it's like I did that one race on my mountain bike in a sweatsuit. I did a race once where I went with a guy, and I made it harder by what I wore and the bike I rode. And it's just, I did. That's how I'm wired. That doesn't, that to me, it's like, you look at the monster become once in a while with the e-bike thing, and I'm like, shit, man. But it's good. It's good to see it, and it's not too late to make corrections and try to feather in some normalcy or a little bit healthier outlooks. But yeah, the whole e-bike thing made me realize about being competitive and how it really, it just becomes your way, where you don't question it, you don't think about it at times, you just.
And that's why I think with with like the league players versus like the recreational players versus the serious players, like, I think that you have to go from being recreational to being serious. But then at some point, it's when I say you can get too serious, that doesn't mean you don't play your ass off. That doesn't mean you don't try hard. It doesn't mean you don't practice. It doesn't mean you don't push yourself. It doesn't mean you don't have goals. It doesn't mean that when you sometimes you have to push yourself to do stuff you don't always feel like doing, or get out of your comfort zone. All that, you can do all of that. But you can do all of that and still retain you don't have to get too swept up. And we've talked so much about narratives and stuff, but like, you can still retain. I think it's like, look at Efren, and you can see a guy who's like playing as hard as you can play, but still kind of like not quite losing just that a guy at the table hitting balls around and having some fun. You know what I mean? And so I think there might be a way to be like, to kind of keep your competitive and still keep your e-bike together, you know?
I think so. Yeah.
And I think that's the mix, at least for me. There's plenty of people that absolutely hate their life to just, grind. And I'm not saying that if you're going to measure it in terms of Fargo rate or high run, there's other ways to achieve effective results that don't lead to happiness, but just lead to results. Yeah. So if all you care about is results and not anything else, there's other ways to get results. But for me, I care about happiness is the paramount thing, and then results can support. Results can work as a pillar in some of the structure that holds happiness up, but I'm never going to sacrifice happiness to pursue results. So the point is that you don't have to. So that's it.
Okay. Yeah.
E-bikes, baby. Well, now, yeah, it makes sense. Although, okay, we will put a little asterisk though with the e-bike people. If there are e-bike people that are bragging about how far they bike with their e-bike.
Yeah.
So I won't say who, but there's actually a person I know that has an e-bike, and it didn't even hit me until you were talking about it, because he was telling me about how he biked like 40 some miles the other day, and I was like, wow. I'm like, when I was a kid, I used to bike a lot. I remember biking 35, 40 was pretty, like, I was in good shape and biking a lot, and that was like, I probably weighed like 12 pounds. I mean, really, I was light, and I was like, man, I'm surprised. Like, that's a pretty good day of biking, man. That's impressive. And now I remember now he has an e-bike. So people that have an e-bike that then that start number dropping.
Put on the Lance Armstrong gear and go on their e-bike.
No, it's odd. Those people, we will channel all the scorn you had for all e-bikers. We will take it all and channel it at just those people.
Yeah. And yeah, now, yeah. Because I haven't seen people like that necessarily. I just see happy people out there on their bike, and they're just doing their thing. And yeah, I don't know.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's cool, man. So all you e-bikers out there, go do your e-biking.
And you have Josh's blessing.
You have exactly. You have my full support.
Okay. So let's see here. All right. Well, it was always going to be this way. So why would I start talking about handicaps? Because our last podcast, we talked about how we were going to a tournament on bar tables that involved a handicap, which is the first handicap tournament I've played in well over 5 years. Well, no, maybe I played a couple in 2017, 18, but it's been a few years, and I didn't have any expectations. I was just like, well, let me just see if something's changed.
Yeah.
So spoiler alert, I'm not a big fan of handicaps, so I don't normally participate, but I'm like, well, I'll give this one a run.
Yeah.
So,
and people that listen to the podcast, I think they know, like, I'm off pool. Like I sold my table, I kept my cues, I played with Demi, mostly, play with my friend Anthony once or twice, every week or two, maybe a little bit with Brecky. But I'm not really doing much with pool. And Demi asked me to go to the tournament with them, and it's handicap bar table. And I'm like, it doesn't matter if we were playing bumper pool. I just want to hang out with Demi. So we went together. It was fun.
Yes. And let's see, how did you end up doing, Josh?
Oh, Demi.
So Josh made the finals.
Yeah.
And then the pool hall closed because of the hour it was. And so they were not able to play the finals. Josh would have had to double dip the eventual winner. But as it is, he took second. So nice shooting, Josh. And you beat some good players along the way. Who I'm trying to think on your way to the finals. I'm trying to remember if you played anybody like that was giving, oh shoot, that was right, me. That's right. You shot my you shot my tail off. Yeah. That was good. That was good. You played well, man. You were hitting them ball. It was fun to watch you hit some balls because you're a hell of a player, and it was fun to watch you hit a nice smooth gear, even if it didn't always feel like it. Like those tables were, it was we haven't played a lot of bar pool lately, and there's always adventures when you go to a different pool room, and it wasn't always perfect, but it was always fun. So,
yeah.
So good shooting. So all right, so that's why. So after that renewed my awareness, rekindled my awareness of some thoughts on handicaps. So we're going to talk about the pros and cons, and of course, shout out to Jesse Engel, who hit me with the joke that there are no pros, because of course there's no professionals in handicap pool. But okay, so the pros and cons of handicaps. Why don't we start with the positives? Because I have a feeling that if I don't make special effort,
Yeah,
I'm gonna
exactly.
run out. And we're okay. So let's dig deep. Now, I understand, and maybe I should have gotten someone else that really likes handicaps, like Mike Page, to get on. That could, like, Mike Page, for those that don't know, he's the Fargo rate inventor, and he's really big on handicaps, and he's a very sharp guy. And maybe if we really wanted to represent handicap tournaments, I would get somebody like that on that can.
Well, yeah, we can get the pros down though.
So okay, hit me
Yeah.
with the pros. Why should I not? Why should I not only hate handicap tournaments? Why no?
Only
What are some
hate-
good things? I mean,
Well,
obviously,
I think like the standard answer would be it gets more people involved in the tournaments. Like if you had non-handicap tournaments,
Yes.
it would get whittled down to a half dozen guys. And eventually,
and you'd have one or two people winning it week after week after week,
Yeah.
and they're just like, ha ha ha, look at how good we are, and they're beating
Yeah.
everybody else out, and then everybody else quits playing because they don't want to give money to that jerk every week.
Yep.
And we see this has happened again and again, and a lot of tournaments quit running because of that phenomenon. Is that one or two people would dominate, they would beat everybody else so often that eventually everything would die out, and there's nothing.
Yep. So it gets bigger fields, which is great for the promoters and for the bar owners or room owners, because they need those larger fields in order to put the money back in and to make the tables available and everything. They have to see good upside. So larger fields is kind of the main thing, because it's a money driven thing, right? Like the people that promote want to have larger fields so they can either draw their sanction fee or get their spiff from the bar or whatever. And then the bars want to have larger fields because they want to, sell drinks, sell food and all that. So I think that's like the biggest benefit is just keeping the field size as large as possible. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I start losing I mean, maybe the next thing would be if someone thinks like there's some, I don't know, like I guess with golf it's more like people of different skill sets can compete against each other and can have that camaraderie and that competition without someone just getting ragdoll every time.
And I think that there's in the theory is that it's not about how good you are. It's about how well what percentage of your best game are you able to bring this day? And it's a contest to see who can give their best today, as opposed to who's given their best in years past to develop a skill set.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is sounds good. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm really trying not to steer. I'm like trying not to go full e-bike mode right now.
Exactly.
I mean, trust me, this is like every positive thing I say is painful.
It's painful.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, those are we should just Google it and read it out loud.
Okay. So
we got our flowers.
that
out
was
there,
good. We
right?
put it a good
Yeah,
2 minutes.
we put
All
it a
right.
good 2 minutes.
So why is it so difficult?
Now
Josh?
Demi's wiping his cue down right now, and he's got his towel out. He's putting powder on his hands. He's getting ready to run 300 here.
Oh my gosh. So why don't you start? Why don't you
Okay,
start?
I'll start because
I'm afraid once I get going, man.
Yeah, because I'm probably yeah. Okay. I hate them. I think they're I hate it. I don't like anything about it. Like I grew up. This is back in my day, but it's true. It's like there wasn't a handicap pool. I had to just go and play Louis Lemke every night that I could at some XYZ pool room, or if it was Gene Lowe or all these guys, right, that were just like weekly grinders. And I had to go do battle as like a 14-year-old kid with grown men that played near professional pool. And I had to like grind it out against them, playing sets to try to win $100 and in these tournaments. And it was like 4, 5, 6 times a week I would do that. And if I was gambling, I never was trying to spot people or get spots. I just wanted to play. So I would just stay within my fences, and then I would shot take and play people that are better and try to gauge my level of play based on that, not based on some sort of handicap or something.
Yeah, and if you played a really, really good player that you'd never beat, and normally he beat you 7-1, 7-3, 7-2, then if it went hill and you lost, yeah, it sucks you didn't win, but like you took him to the hill.
Exactly.
And that you don't have to win to make progress on your personal performance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. I don't have to. Yeah. And I don't need some sort of like help to get across the finish line. I don't. I mean, that's not my mindset. That even as a kid, like a child, it never even kind of crossed my mind. And the only so that was kind of the way I grew up, and so I don't like it now. Like I think I don't. I think there's other ways to grow the game and have the fields work without giving everybody an e-bike. It's like a pedal assist or whatever. It's like I think there's ways to grow the game and to make the game fun, and maybe it's divisions. Maybe it's divisions instead of handicapping. Because I remember one time I played Jimmy, right? And I was a kid. I was like 15 years old, and he gave me like a cup. Like I don't remember how many games I got, but I beat him, and it meant nothing to me. Everyone's like, "Oh, you beat Jimmy and everything," and I'm just like, it meant nothing because I'm like, well, he's handicapping me. So even at 15 years old or whatever, I was like, yeah, it didn't mean anything to me. So it's like that's my perspective, or that's only how I'm coming from it. Now everyone can come from their own way, but that's how I look at it. I just think handicaps, I don't know, man. I just don't like them. I don't enjoy it. So I don't play them. Like I just don't participate in that. Like I used to play a lot of leagues, and they had handicaps as leagues and things. And I don't play leagues anymore. I just kind of do my own thing, or play different tournaments, or like, and then what happens is I end up going to pro tournaments, get my nuts shut off, and and it's like it's a very difficult process, but that's a much more meaningful process to me, rather than getting weight or giving weight and playing people. It's just, I don't know, man. I don't know, Demi.
Yeah.
I don't. It doesn't sit with me. I don't like handicaps.
So I could, yeah, 100% feel the same way. And and that doesn't mean we're right. But so I'll share a couple thoughts as far as in general, and then I'll go into like how handicaps are for me personally. So in general, and one thing I want to mention too is I really challenged myself to adapt with the times, because I could sit there and be like, well, I like it when I was a kid, it was done like this. It's like, yeah, well, things change. And for example, I remember when I first started playing on bar tables, and maybe I've told this story, but it was really, really difficult for me to play on bar tables, because I grew up playing 9-foot, and that was pool. I don't want to say that was real pool, but like, I guess I've always kind of felt like that's real pool. That's what the pros play. That's what that's what I've always played. And so when I first started thinking about competing on bar tables, it was really, really hard for me to want to do it. And what I had to tell myself is, I looked at it and I said, the game has always been evolving. 150 years ago, they didn't even have straight pool. It was they played 15 points and re-rack, and 15 points and re-rack, and then, or they played bulk line billiards before that. Then it was like straight pool without the break shot, and then it would turn into straight pool with the break shot. But even then, it was on 10-foot tables, and it had ivory balls. And then they went to 9-foot tables, because that's what the compromise between the North and the South. And then they switched from straight pool, and then they switched to 9-ball, but it was 2-foul push out. And then they went to Texas Express 9-ball in the 80s. And then it was like, and then that's exactly how it was when I started playing Texas Express 9-foot 9-ball. And then after that, then it went to like, the jump cues came out, and I wasn't a big fan of that. Then the 7-footer movement got really big, and I wasn't a big fan of that. I'm like, look, the game has always been changing. I can't sit there and say that for the last 120 years, every change in this game was positive, because it made it how it is right now, which is perfect, because I started playing. And then everything that's happened after I picked up IQ is degeneration and horrible. Like 120 years of growth, and then nothing but degeneration. And what was the point at which it was perfect? It was the point right when I picked up IQ and happened to join the game. Like, that's a pretty self-centered view of how pool ought to be. And so I try to talk myself into looking at pool as an evolution game. It's always going to be evolving, and a champion has to continue to develop their skills. And part of that is adapting the new skills to play on 7 foots in different games. So I try to be open-minded as much as I can. But none of that has to do, like, all of those are different, because all of those involve an equal contest. And so this is the first change. With jump cues, people say, well, everybody can learn to jump. Yep, that's true. Whatever. But handicaps are different, because now you're taking out the equality piece of it. so that's why I think this is different than just saying, oh, well, it wasn't that way when I was a kid. It's like, yeah, I can handle a lot of change, but this is a direction I don't like to see change. Um, so that was one thought about that. Does that make sense? I should look at my notes here.
Yeah, I like what you're saying, Demi, because it takes a lot of responsibility and like personal responsibility and reflection and I think what you're saying is good. Like, and it challenges me to say the same thing, which is, hey, like I'm sharing my thoughts on handicap. That doesn't mean that I get to like everyone needs to do what I'm doing or like I dictate terms of how things need to go. I just am sharing my thoughts on it, and I think that the reason why it's kind of important for us to share our thoughts on it is because I think it's just been kind of assumed that this is the way it is and that this is the way it should be and that this is the best for the game and the best for everybody. And it's like, I get to have an opinion, you get to have an opinion, and we're sharing our opinions. And I'm saying, I don't know if it's the best for everybody. I don't know if it's the best for the game. I don't know if that's true. I'm at least questioning it. And then I'm using my own experience to say, well, pool's done a lot for me in my life and the journey that I had with pool. And if I was go back in a time machine and they had handicaps when I started when I was 13, I might not have ever experienced all the things that I experienced with pool because of, yeah, if I'd been a kid when handicaps were around, I don't know if I would have had all of the awesome experiences that I had playing pool.
Yeah.
And the challenges that came about it.
You might not have had the same path.
Yeah,
and so, I was going to save this for the end because for this to really make sense, I'll have to give my reasons as to why I feel as passionately as I feel about not having handicaps. But for me, it's a total non-starter, meaning I would, for people like, well, it's needed to grow the game. First of all, I disagree. I think that there's plenty of people that will agree with Josh and I. And if we can get those, and so one of the reasons I'm doing this is, well, one reason is this podcast. So I'm here to share my thoughts with y'all, and hopefully you can enjoy some of them. But another reason is that if I can mobilize a lot of people that feel like you and I, then it, maybe it doesn't have to be the only thing around as handicaps. So for people that are like, well, the game will die without handicaps. You need that to keep the game going. It's a tough economy. It's different than it was when, pool's not as big. If we don't do these things, pool won't grow. My response to that is I would rather cut off both my hands and never play pool again than ever play another handicap tournament. So if that's your best argument is, well, if we don't have handicaps, then we just don't have anything. Well, then nothing. I will take nothing then.
Yeah.
I will take nothing. And I will tell you why in a minute. I will get into why I feel that strongly. So, but what I told Josh one time, we have the same thing with big table versus bar table.
I was just thinking the same thing about bar table pool. Yeah.
The bar table pool is really big in our community, and there's not much 9-foot anymore, and it's changed in the last 20 years. And so there was a time, Josh, we've mentioned when you ran some tournaments you wanted to run some tournaments just to have some 9-foot tournaments. And so you actually added some of your own money out of pocket just to put up added money tournaments that people could come and play. And
non-handicap big table 10 ball. Yeah.
And so you added your own money. So you're competing to get your own money back. And you ran a 5 of those events that I could, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember they did okay. And you were thinking about doing it again, or even adding more of your own money like a year or two later. And because you were like, I just think that Minnesota players deserve an opportunity to play nice tournaments, and that they should be able to play on 9-foot tables and compete. They should have an opportunity. I just want to give people an opportunity. What did I tell you? Do you remember what I told you?
You said something about you should just take your money and just give it to them to hang around.
No.
Like that,
so yeah, exactly. So what I said is that if you have to add your own money, I said, Josh, I said the market. I said we did have open 9-foot tournaments. I said, and the market spoke and said they weren't interested. I said, basically, nobody wanted to play them, and that's why they don't offer them anymore.
Yeah.
And if you have to go into your pocket and add your own money to get people to show up and play, I said, then basically, first of all, what happened is the first turnout, we had like 16 players, which was a decent turnout of a 9-foot, 10 ball. But half of them were like old timers that just wanted to come see what was going on and kind of relive the memories.
Just to be clear, we didn't have that many. We had 8 at the most. There were always 8 players.
Oh, they
and
were
then
only 8?
There were only 8, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just sharing because the reason why I'm saying that, Demi, it was nearly impossible for me to fill it. Like it wasn't impossible, but it was a struggle every single tournament.
Okay.
And I had to drop the entry fee and I had to do these things. And like, yeah, it was a disaster. People did not want to,
Yeah. So and I know everyone's thinking, well, that's why we need handicaps and that's why bar tables are. Yeah, hold on. I'm getting to you folks next. Be patient. So but the point is that there was a number of old timers that would show up, and guys that had been around the game throughout the 70s and 80s that showed up just to kind of see what was going on and kind of reminisce a little bit and see each other again. And after the first tournament or two, the novelty wore off, and it was like the same 4 or 5 guys. It went back to exactly what everybody's concerned about. So all the pro handicap people would be like, "Yep, that's why." And what I told Josh, so he was thinking about adding more money and trying to run something like that again. And what I told him is that if you have to add your own money, you're basically bribing people to show up. If they're not interested in playing on 9 foots and playing without a handicap, and you have to add your own money, I said you might as well go onto Craigslist and put out an ad for like aspiring actors, and that you'll pay everybody $50 a day to just show up at this pool room and hang out with the pool cue in their hand and pretend that they are pool players. Because if you have to pay your own money to get a tournament filled up, that's basically what you're doing. Is you're basically bribing people. You're basically hiring actors to pretend that they're interested in playing on 9-footers. Because if you're not paying them to show up, they're not showing up. So therefore, there's really nobody wants to play.
Yeah, it was a bummer, man.
And so first of all, I recognize the challenge, but the point is that I would feel the same way about handicaps. If you have to promise everybody a chance to win a tournament for them to show up and play, then I just feel like that's not really.
You're kind of bribing them too.
You're kind of bribing them.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was my point. It's a non-starter for me. I'd rather have nothing. And actually, if we had nothing, there's a chance that somebody would actually show up for a non, because you're not it's kind of the problem is that if you run these handicap tournaments, then people quit showing up to the open tournaments, because why would they? Because I'd rather show up at my one where I get 3 games on the wire. Why would I show up for the one where I don't?
Yeah.
So it's really you're hurting. If we had 0 handicap tournaments, there's a chance we could actually grow some of these. Maybe your tournaments would have filled up a little bit easier
if there weren't handicaps.
if there wasn't something running.
Well, for sure they would.
Where somebody could go get 3 games to 7 on the
yeah.
Okay.
No, for sure. Yeah.
So none of these are really my main point. I'm just kind of circling into the stuff that is more meaningful to me. These are all kind of like just warm up. This is just my warm ups. So of course we could talk about how handicaps are never accurate. You know what I mean? How somebody's always underrated and people are always complaining about stuff. And then it changes the game from like who can, it changes the game from who can perform to like who can
sandbag
and all that stuff. So we all know that. I'm assuming that people have some kind of experience in handicap tournaments. They already know all this. But there's other things that happen. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about how handicaps have played out for me. They've played out for me differently than I think they play out for a lot of people. Because what happens is that I'm one of the better players in my area. So when I compete, I'm not, if there's 32 players in the tournament, I'm not the guy in the middle of the pack where sometimes I'm getting 1 game or sometimes I'm giving up 1 game. And a lot of times I'm playing even, and it's not necessarily decisive. It doesn't change the course of events that much. I'm the guy giving up like ridiculous handicaps that really, really, really change the flow of a set of pool.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to talk about 2 ways that they change the flow of the set of pool, and where some of these handicaps break down when you start talking about one of the stronger players in town. So the first one is something to do with the intimidation factor. And I'm not a very intimidating person. I don't try to be intimidating or anything like that, but I have a little thought experiment with a straight pool tournament where you have to give a handicap. So suppose there's a person, let's just pick a name that's kind of somewhat common. We'll call him Tom. Okay, so I give Tom, let's say that the correct handicap is, I should, on paper, like if I actually had to play him 100 times, 50 points. Like, let's just say that for every 100 points I score, he's going to score 50. If we played all day long, I'm going to outscore him 2-1. So the correct, air quote, correct handicap would be 50 points.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem is that maybe when we first start playing, I only have to give them 40 points. And I play really well and I win. So then the next time we play, they've adjusted and I have to give them 50 points to 100, which should be a fair game. But the problem is he's intimidated by me because he knows I've beat him in the past and he knows I play well and he's feeling nervous and he doesn't perform very well. So I beat him again. So then I got to give him the next tournament. I ended up spotting him 60 points to 100. So now on paper, he's supposed to be the favorite. But he just underperforms against me because he's nervous and I beat him every time we've played. And I'm somehow I still outrun the best of it. And then I give him 70 points the next tournament and I still outperform him because he still just finds a way to dog it to me. Because every time he plays me, he remembers how bad he played against me last time and how he's never beat me. And there's just so many things going on in his head. And all of a sudden, the next tournament, I have to give him 80 points to 100. And all of a sudden, there's part of him where he's like, all I got to do is make 20 balls. I mean, I could be a snake bit ever, and I can't help but win. Like, I'm not even nervous anymore. And all of a sudden, he's completely loses any nerves. He loses any intimidation. And he plays well enough to where he had a pretty good chance of beating me with only 50 balls. And all of a sudden he gets to 100. I'm at like 30, and he's like, oh yeah, that was easy. So the problem about it is like, it's like, you can't, there are situations where it's almost impossible to set a fair handicap in practice, because if people are intimidated and if people are dogging it and nervous and having a hard time believing that, having struggles with confidence and belief, then you could adjust it, give them a lot of games and they'll still find ways to melt down. And it ends up until you give them so many games that they no longer struggle with belief. And all of a sudden it turns out that they're getting way too many games. And now for a guy like me, I have zero chance. As soon as like I would have had zero chance 20 balls ago had they had more belief. You know what I mean? Does that make any sense? Did I explain that somewhat okay?
Yeah. So what's the counter to it? Or what's the...
Well, it's a challenge that people, it's a challenge because when here's the problem is when you have two players that are both middle of the pack playing each other, where one person's giving up a game or getting a game or playing even, those people aren't experiencing that dynamic. So if somebody is listening to this and they're in the middle of the pack with the tournaments they play, in their experience, most of the time they're getting or giving one or two games. And so even if that handicap makes a difference in the outcome, it's not changing. It's not like if they're giving one game up to 6 against a guy that they usually beat, they're not like, I don't know if I can win. And if they're getting one game to 6 against a guy that is pretty, maybe this guy is a little bit better than them, but they're close enough to where it's not like they're intimidated by the guy. So these are not changing the intimidation dynamics for them. They're just like, well, I'm playing guys that are around my skill level. If I have to give up a game or get a game on the wire, either way, we both knew we had a chance. So none of that really was affected by the handicap. Whereas for me, there's a lot of times people see my win rate and they don't realize that my win rate is that baked into my win rate was a fair amount of people dogging it and being intimidated. And that if people just quit dogging it and being intimidated, they would be rated much closer to me than they realize, and that these handicaps are not appropriate because maybe, for example, if I was supposed to give this guy 50 games to 100 or 50 points to 100, if that's the quote unquote fair handicap, the fact is that maybe the only reason I ever outscored him 2-1 is because he was so intimidated by me the whole time. Maybe if he didn't know who he was playing, maybe I would have only been beating him 100 to, maybe 100 to 70 or something. Yeah. So like maybe the right handicap should have only been 30 points. Yeah. And that actually even giving him 50 is still too many, because once he realizes that it's not that hard to beat me, all of us, so I'm just saying people that are in the middle of the pack might not realize how that dynamic could break down for top players. So when a top player tries to play in a handicap tournament, these are some of the problems and why, at least why I feel like things have not gone well for me in handicap tournaments. It's been pretty insurmountable at times.
So that tournament we played at the Mad Apple, there was a kid, let's just say the handicaps went from like 4 to 8. Is that correct?
Yes.
On a bar table, and you were an 8. And let's just say there was a kid that was like a 4. Are you saying that this might be a separate topic or different idea, Dem, but I'm trying to find out, because I thought you might have said something like this. Is there or maybe this is what I gleaned from what you just said. is there a point at which you can give a guy that's very, very novice player on a bar table, you can give him, he can get so many games that the intimidation is gone and he feels like he's at an advantage, and then he's, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So there's,
Like you can make this
Yeah, yeah.
spread so far,
So
and the
there's-
game so far.
there were definitely people that, that it's okay. So here's another way of saying it. If I play someone one pocket and you play to whoever gets 8 balls first, if I'm beating that person 8-1, 8-3, 8-2, 8-3, 8-1, 8-0, okay, I beat them 5 games in a row and they never even got to 4. Well, if that person said, well, here, give me four balls, play me 8-4, I got to get 4 balls before you get 8. And I'd be like, that seems like a big handicap. They're like, well, I've never even gotten past 3. What's the difference? You would have still won every game. Only a complete idiot novice gambler would say, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because the problem is the reason you never got past 3 is because you needed all 8. And so you were playing for 8 and you were making decisions that needed 8 and you were up against it and you were stuck 3 games and didn't know if you could win and up against it against a good player. Whereas if all you got to do is make 4 balls, it doesn't just change. It doesn't work that way. It's the same thing with no limit poker. No limit poker. If somebody has 75% of the chips, they also have things that they can do with their stack that
because of the chips.
It's like more chips makes more. I mean, rich people can make more money investing than a poor person can make because the poor people can't get in on the best deals. They don't have enough money. It doesn't work that. So it just doesn't quite work that way. And so, yes, that played out. It played out in the tournament for sure. I was an 8 and you were a 7. And the funny part is that, which I think is, of course we think is a joke because Josh and I play even. So it was just off Fargo rate, and my Fargo rate at the time was over a magic number that shifted me to an 8. And so that extra game mattered. I mean, because I had a lot of matches in a row where it came down to that game made a difference. And it's like,
when I played the kid, like it was a 4, I feel like he's uphill.
Yeah.
If I was an 8, I would have way different experience.
Yeah.
I think, and he would have felt differently probably too.
So that's the first part I wanted to talk. The other part about my personal experience with this tournament was I felt that it's weird that I felt this way, but I really felt like I didn't really get to play. And the reason I say that is because I could play as good as I can play. And that was how well I played meant nothing to the outcome of these matches. Mm-hmm. I was giving up such big handicaps that what it came down to was if my opponents dogged it or if they didn't dog it. Mm-hmm. So if my opponents, like I'd start off and I'd be giving up 4 games to 8 against some guy, and I'd start off really good and I'd win 5 out of 6 games or something to tie it up at 5 apiece. And then from there, it's an even race to 3, but now they're expecting that they're going to lose. But all of a sudden they get a 110 combo and they go up 6-5 in a race to 8. And then all of a sudden I finally dog a ball, or maybe they get or we have a moving game at on the 5 ball and they're able to get the first shot. And all of a sudden it's like, well, if they run those 5 balls out, then all of a sudden I'm down 7-5 and I got to win 3 in a row and they're on the hill and I don't have any room. So it's like, and what I would say is, for me, I could play great. But it wasn't enough. I could play as good as I can play, and I couldn't win unless they played terrible. Like I really needed them to choke. Like basically every match, set after set after set, my opponents had chances to win. And then I would just have to sit back and hope that they choked. And sometimes they did. And then sometimes they did. Mm-hmm. And so it was basically like how it felt to me was I didn't even feel like I was there playing pool. I felt like I drove out to Wisconsin so I could go back the 5-ball ghost against players on a bar table. Like, okay, I'm gonna, you're gonna get a 5-ball run, and I guess I'll bet on the ghost and hope that you dog it. And if you don't, I guess I'm eliminated.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how it felt to me. It was like every one of those matches, I played pretty well, and every one of those matches, I'm just basically betting, hoping that my opponents dog it. And it was all the play was up to whether or not they dogged or whether they played well. And if they played halfway decent, then they beat me, and I'd be like, good shooting. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't really good for me. So again, that may not apply. Those last 2 things I talked about with like the intimidation factor evaporating and how the skill gaps that people think are there in large part are psychological, and that they go away and become unfair once those handicaps are in play. And so that what it comes down to is where it feels like a back of the ghost against people on a bar table.
Yeah.
again, and a match after match, and hoping that a series of people choke to me. And it's like, yeah, not much fun.
Yeah.
But that's just the tip of the iceberg. What else do you got? Any comments on that?
Oh no, the only thing I'd say about my experience out there is that I felt similar, but they kept talking it like I felt like it was like a poker tournament where I just ran good because people made mistakes, you know. It's like I was in the same very sim like I was giving up less weight, which was good, but I still felt like there was times in that tournament, many times where I'm just like, well, there's 5 balls on the table. Let's see what they do. And a lot of times they didn't get it done. So
And
you know.
so then I hear people thinking, well, I mean, one of you guys got to the finals, and that's how handicaps work. And what do you want to just win everyone? So let me talk to you people. No, that's not what I want. I don't want to win everyone. So, and the fact that if anybody out there is thinking, well, I mean, you shouldn't just be staying in local tournaments and robbing the same thing. Yeah, that's why I don't really play local tournaments. And that was actually the first tournament I've played in the Midwest. I mean, I've
Years,
much, yeah. I could count like I basically don't play pool in Minnesota anymore. I think that's a pretty safe statement. I think I've played one mini event in the last several years, and it's like, yeah, I don't play in my home state, which is different than when I grew up. I would have thought, like, when I grew up, the top players were kind of revered, and they were afforded opportunities to win tournaments, and that people looked up to them and respected them, and it was okay if some money flowed up to the top players because people wanted to take their own shot at getting there someday. And so there was a hierarchy, and there was some upward mobility of money, and there was a payoff for achieving a certain breakthroughs and success. And I think that all gets dismantled when because now there is no upward mobility of money, and there's not a lot of respect for the top local players, because people can turn on YouTube and watch filler, and they're just like, yeah, I mean, you're only a 710 or whatever, 730 or 720 or whatever. It's like, yeah, I mean, I watch people that are really good, and you're not that good, and so it's different, and which is fine. That's fine. But so then to answer the people about, well, then if you're not, maybe you shouldn't play those events. Like, you're right. That's why I don't. That's why I play open pro tournaments. And that's, if people want to say that's where I belong, hey, I'm happy. I'm honored to be there. When I was younger, I could win money locally and then go spend that to go take shots at pro tournaments.
Yeah.
And so there was something about like a career path where players could kind of, aspiring professionals could make money locally, and then it could help them spread their wings. So I am a little concerned about like how it makes it more difficult for if we want to see the U.S. do well on the international scene, having opportunities for aspiring professionals to make money can't hurt. But nobody cares about that. Nobody really. I mean, people care about themselves and their own pool halls and their own journey. So we'll keep coming back to that. So none of that is really my biggest argument. So here I save what really matters to me for the end, which is pool is very important to me. There's something profoundly deep about pool, and that the things that you were talking about, like your experiences with pool and how they would have been different had you grown up, in a handicap environment. I have learned a lot from pool. Pool has been one of the most meaningful things in my life. It's been a constant throughout my life. And a lot of the success I've had in life is because of how pool has shaped me. And one of the things that happens in pool is there is a curve. And on my website, it says input equals output. It's the first words on my website. And there is a curve in pool of how much input you have to put in and how much output you get out. So input could be things like hard work, hours, years, months, and years. It can be adversity, losses, failures, negative emotional storms, personal emotional battles. It can be getting out of your comfort zone and dealing with, pressure and anxiety and fear. So that's all. And it could just be grinding, just doing stuff you don't really want to have to do because you want to achieve your goals. So like that's input. And then you've got output. And output can take many different forms. Output could be a win. It could be a high run. It could be progress at a certain skill. It could be winning money. It could be having people pay you a compliment. It could be, beating a player you haven't beaten before. Those are examples of output. And so in the beginning, you could put in a little bit of input and receive a lot of output. And what I mean by that is, if you've only been playing pool for a few days, well, if you practiced every day for a week for like a couple hours a day, you will be a different player in a week than you were on day one. You just won't even be the same. And so you get your progress improved so quickly in the beginning. There's a learning curve, and that learning curve is like you get better super, super, super fast in the beginning. And then as you get down that journey, so the first couple months are like a rocket ship of improvement. And then then there's like 3 to 5 years where it's fast improvement. And then little by little by little, that gets tougher and tougher and tougher. I guess I'm picturing a graph where it's like not a parabolic curve, but like a hyperbola. Is that what they are? Like sideways, where it's going to approach but never hit a certain number. Anyway, it's like it gets flatter and flatter. Or to think of it easier, it's like if you're trying to pick fruit from a tree. In the beginning, you just shake the branches and fruit falls, and then you just reach up and pluck fruit off the lower branches. And pretty soon you're climbing higher and higher and higher, and the amount of work for fruit gets very, very difficult. Except if only it was as easy as climbing a tree. It's more of an Everest expedition. But the point is, I'm getting carried away here. The point is, that's how the curve works. And to me, there is a reason for that. And this is where I might lose some of you, because it's almost, I hate to go here, but it's almost a spiritual purpose, which is like, it was almost as if pool was there to teach me something. And it was there to teach me that the game is not about output, that the game is about input. And so almost like if, let's just say if God was trying to train me to put in the right work with the right state of mind. And the way that God's going to train me on this one is that in the beginning, like an owner training a dog, it's going to give me little treats when I do the right thing to teach me what the right thing to do is. Oh, you're practicing? Oh, see, you're getting better. See that? Oh, you're putting some work. Oh, here, you beat a guy that you couldn't have beat last week. Isn't that nice? It's almost like you get lots of rewards in the beginning to teach you the right path. And then as the path gets more difficult, the rewards become more intermittent. And it's almost like there comes a point when you get good enough and you work hard enough to where it's almost like the rewards stop. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, because even though I can't say like nothing, like I just had a pretty good session today where I hit dead stroke and I did something kind of cool on the pool table today that makes me feel good. But like, ain't nobody gonna read about it on AZ Billiards. I didn't win any money for it. You know what I mean? It was just a personal positive experience on the pool table. It lasted about an hour. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, if that's a reward, and that's like as much of a reward as I've gotten in the last couple of months, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, I don't win anymore. I don't get to win because I don't get to play locally for reasons I've just discussed. And when I play nationally, I don't win. So I don't win tournaments. I don't win money. I don't really there's really no output, and it's hard to see progress. It's really, 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 really painstakingly hard to actually see anything change in my game. So it's like, there's very little output and positive, there's very little external reward for anything I do. But that's okay, because I learned, I was taught, I figured out that pool's not about output. And I was taught that pool is not about output, it's about input. And I had to be encouraged to put an input in the beginning. And in the beginning, I was an output addict. In the beginning, I was an output addict, and I just wanted my output. I wanted my output. So I guess I'll put an input. How much more input do I have to do to get my output? But then that's how one of the ways I've grown, and one of the ways I've matured is because this is one of the things pool has done for me, is it's taught me that I was an output addict and I was a junkie, and that I had a very immature mindset, and that I learned that pool is about input. And I started developing a mature relationship with pool, and I kind of grew up a little bit, and I started appreciating the beauty of putting in input and challenging yourself to put in more input. And then as a result of that, I guess I've been weaned off output where I don't really care. And when I do experience output, it's so few and far between that the amount of input I had to get there, it makes the output feel absurdly trivial. And I'm not addicted to it, so I don't really care. So I can enjoy it once in a while and be like, oh, that was nice. I had a high run, or I had a good day, or that was a nice set against so and so. That was fun. But like at this point, I guess what I would say is pool forced me to overcome my output addiction and kind of mature and find a more meaningful purpose and relationship with the game. And to me, that's what pool, that it was like you couldn't, if you created the world and how the game worked and the learning curve, you couldn't have set it up any better. The natural learning curve couldn't have been, almost like Earth is like the only planet that can support life because we have an atmosphere and water and the right distance from the sun and blah blah blah. It's a miracle. Pool is a miracle. It's set up perfectly for somebody to be shown the right path, encouraged down that path, and then encouraged to grow and mature. And it's like somewhere along the lines, people said, yeah, but we really like output though. So we're going to be like the dog that says, no, I hear what you're saying is that you're going to give me treats and tell me to sit, and then you're going to stop giving me treats. How about I just attack you and take the box of biscuits? That is how it feels to me. It's like people are like, we're going to hack the output vending game here because we really want our output. And so this whole growing, maturing, and developing a relationship with the input and all that, no, let's just give output away. We're just going to give everyone output.
And we're going to demand output as players. Players are all demanding output. That's what the market is demanding. Kind of.
Yeah. And it's to me, that's why I would rather not have any pool, because to me, it is, I can't, I'm probably going to fall short of explaining how it actually feels to me. It
takes the beauty of the journey away from the game.
It's horrifying to me.
Yeah.
That's it. It's horrifying to me. And I look at it and I'm like, I can understand the allure, but just like anything else, it's like you could fill in, pick 5 or 10 of the most deadly vices that we know, people can overindulge in different areas of their life. And it's like, it's like, let's just eat ice cream every meal. Let's just,
candy.
Let's just have a big orgy. Let's just go and gamble away all kinds of money. Let's just let's just shoot up. Let's just do everything. Let's just, it's like, I don't know, man. That's how it feels. And that's why, you know what? I've never liked Las Vegas. I hate tournaments in I don't like Las Vegas. Mm-hmm. Las Vegas, I feel dirty just being in that city because it's like everything that's sad and tragic about mankind,
indulgent, and
everything, every kind of gross indulgence about human nature is like packed into one city and celebrated. It's like the lobby of hell. It's how it feels. And in the middle of that lobby, there's the devil giving everyone their handicap. All right. That's all. did I come on too strong?
That was good, man. That was
okay,
awesome.
So that's how I feel.
That's awesome.
What do you think about all that?
No, that's why I love you, Demi, because you're a passionate guy and you have a lot of you just have you have ideas that are not for everybody, but they're awesome. They're awesome.
With all due respect.
With all due respect. Yeah, exactly.
Nate's gonna kick me off the podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, he's gonna. You know what? Maybe controversy isn't like any publicity.
Any publicity is good.
That's right. Okay.
So you got to come up with a title about how to piss all over handicaps in the title.
Oh my gosh. So okay. Then this is where our club that we're working on is going to be really cool. I feel like handicap tournaments, and to a much, much, much lesser extent, bar table pool. Bar tables, like on a 1 to 100, if handicaps are 100, bar tables are like, 10, 20. It's like, I like 9 foots, but I understand that bar tables have a place. Like I can understand the place for bar tables, especially among amateurs and league players, and totally fine. So, but for me, I look at like handicap bar table events as like the opium dens of output. And what we're going to do with our club is it's going to be like a rehab of input. It's going to be like a temple of input. And so, people that come and play in our club, it's going to be a private club, and people that want to be members of our club, we're going to have, 9-foot diamonds, and we're going to develop a culture of input where we're going to be doing training, and we're going to be doing, a lot of cool skill building and clinics and lessons and and sparring and hard work. We're going to be doing hard work, man.
Yeah.
And so for people that want to be part of that club, if they then want to go and play in local tournaments and use those
Shoot up and
skills,
do their drugs.
no, I mean that's fine. I'm totally fine because honestly, it's fine. And they're because they're at a different stage in their journey than I'm in mine, and so they should go out and carve up some of these tournaments and see some progress and stuff like
come
that.
in, sharpen their claws, and go out.
And frankly,
shred.
I hope that they do, watch their Fargo shoot up 50 points and go buzzed, bulldoze through their division with their spots or whatever. And then I hope that they get moved up to the point where by the time that their journey ends, as far as their handicap road, as they go as far as that road can take them, by the time they get further down that road, I want to accelerate them down that road and also have shown them the correct way to approach pool to where once they start seeing some of the darker side and some of the, once they get downstream a little bit and they realize it's not necessarily where they want to live. I hope to have already helped give them a foundation that in terms of attitudes and work ethic and direction to carry them further so they can. I just want to see everybody. This game gets more and more beautiful the deeper you go, and so I'm just like, when I look at the table, I see the way I see the table and the way I'm able to play. It's not the best in the world, but man, it's pretty cool, and I want to share it with everybody that wants to see it. That's it.
That's awesome.
Cool. So, okay. So then,
so
now I'm going to hit you with a listener question that I wanted to save till the end. We'll get off the handicaps. So now I'm going to hit you with a listener question. You ready?
Yep.
Let's see. I've had something rolling around my mind that I wondered might be a good topic. Are there ways to objectively measure progress outside of Fargo rate or league win percentage for the average amateur player? So if you're trying to measure your progress, you can look at Fargo rate, you can look at your wins and losses in your league matches, but is there a better way to measure your pool progress? So here's what he says. As a basis, you should know that I'm a big walk softly and carry a big statistic kind of guy. So he's a statistics guy. So if he's not careful, he could find himself looking at his Fargo rate, even when he hasn't played for several days. Those numbers don't move around that much. So, and he doesn't feel like Fargo rate tells him in real time all the truth because they can fluctuate due to things out of his control. So bottom line, he knows I'm skipping some of this. I know I'm getting better. My collection of failures has yielded me more frequent tournament success. My caches and tournaments are up. The reason I think the only objective data I have isn't telling the whole truth is that they're generated mostly in league play. And league play is kind of wacky. And then he kind of goes on to explain that he can have wins and losses due to luck, due to his opponents, due to other things. Bottom line, I guess he's saying, is there a way to track, to measure? What are some new ways of measuring your progress? So what are your thoughts? What are ways?
Yeah, I have a way that I did it and it worked great. Like I played a certain number of ghost balls and I played thousands of racks basically. And I just tracked and saw how I was doing versus how I did against the ghost. And then, so it was like, I did that for months. And then I could see when you play that many games against the ghost, you really start to see how against a specific number of balls, ghost or whatever, you can really see how you're doing. Like to me, you can see, like I had a really good experience doing that because I was able to see my performance on a daily basis. And so your performance can fluctuate up and down based on how you're feeling, just randomness, whatever. But in general, I could see, the number of games that I was losing go down, and then I was able to do, like one day I did 100 games and I tracked and I looked over the course of those sets and was able to see that number was lower, so it's like, so I was able to go through this process of seeing daily, weekly feedback based on the ghost, and then putting a pressure day in there where I was playing, 100 games and really feeling like, well, this is like, I'm giving myself a full sample So it's like statistics. Like I'm not a stats guy, so I'm just not that. I'm more, like I said, I'm more of a feely guy. But that is one way that I was statistically able to look at my numbers daily, weekly, monthly over the course of 6 months. So
Yeah. It's interesting.
And then input versus output, Demi. I'm
Yes.
sorry, just to finish
Hit
it
me,
out.
please.
I had my garage and I had my table in my garage and I literally had hash marks. And so after 6 months, I just had a wall full of hash marks on this board. And so I'd be able to look at all the input I put in, playing that many games. And then I never really questioned whether I was getting good or not. Because it would be impossible for me to play that many games and to care deeply, about that process and to not get better at the
And
game.
that's where I was. Okay, so now you're speaking my language. The only I was fly on the wall when you went through your ghost volume, and that was a great thing to do. The thing about it is what you just said speaks to me. So what I told this gentleman, I've talked to him since then, is this has to do with the same thing. The reason I held this off at the end is the same idea about, are we focusing on input or output here? And what he's basically saying is, I want to measure my progress because I enjoy seeing progress. That is a form of output. Seeing progress is a form of output. So what he's basically saying is, pool has a lot of fluctuation and pool has a lot of variance as far as like your opponents can get lucky or you could have a bad day. And so I can't always tell if I'm getting better for every practice session I put in. So how can I set it up to where I can visibly see every single positive improvement at all times so that I could continue? And what I basically explained to him is like, basically you're asking for constant output. You're asking to be continuously pat on the back for doing a good job.
Yeah.
And so part of what I kind of explained all this to him, and I'm like, it's kind of like going to the church and saying it's like, I want to believe in God, but can you just perform miracles for me each day just to kind of make sure I keep believing? It's like, yeah, that's not really how faith works, And so, and I'm just using that as an example. So it's like faith, you have to have part of the challenge of pool is you have to have faith that if you are doing the right things and you are on the right road, you have to have faith. And then you have to measure on input, not on output. And that there might be stretches where you don't see a ton of output in the form of, you're not always going to, like if you play straight pool. And so this is where it gets tough, right? Is that as you get better and better, it's going to be harder and harder to set high runs. And so if the only thing that you celebrate is high runs and visible progress, then you're going to be like really resentful of how much work you have to put in and how little visible progress you get. And so the answer is not to find a way to force more visible progress. The answer is letting go of that and measuring yourself more on input. And so I don't measure myself on visible progress. Like Josh says, I measure myself by the sweat at the end of the day, the hashtags, whether it's the hash marks or the hashtags, whether it's the hash marks on the wall or however you do it, whether it's, and I have my own ways. We've talked about practice and stuff. We can talk about it again if people are interested. But the bottom line is, I have learned. So the good news, this is what I was saying. Pool progress was built perfectly. In the beginning, you see progress very, very rapidly. And then right around the time that progress starts becoming more difficult to see, you should have been playing long enough by now to understand the types of things that you did to develop those skills. So you know what it meant to put in some hard sessions, and you know what it meant to spend time working on certain things. And so now it's your job to do that without always getting a pat on the back and visible rewards and visible output. And so that's what I do. And that's, Josh was just kind of saying that, is that in the beginning, he saw improvement. And then if you were to do it again and run the same 1,000 games again, you might not see a huge lift. It's tough. It's tough to, I wish it was as easy as just every time you play 1,000 racks against the ghost, you're going to get a half a ball better. It's just, if it was that easy, we'd all be better, of course. You know what I mean? It's a pretty tough game. And so the point is that, but you know that if you're doing that it's on the right path. And you don't necessarily know if it's going to be, you're going to have your next half ball breakthrough is going to be in 100 racks or 100,000 racks. You don't know, but you know what the path is. So now focus on the hash browns. Just focus on the hash, man.
Yeah.
Anyway, so just focus on the hash. So that's it. So that's what I kind of told them, is I was like, we have to measure ourselves. instead of measuring ourselves and indulging on output, measure yourself on input. Now, you always, in the long run, of course, you have to challenge the types of input you're putting in, and output is how we stay accountable. The result goals are how we keep our process goals, stay accountable for doing the right process goals and all that. But that's another conversation. But I'm assuming that everybody, let's just assume for a minute that everybody knows what they should do. So if you don't know what you should do, that's a different conversation. But assuming you know what you should do, measure yourself on doing it. And I actually had a couple of conversations with some younger guys that were I feel like a lot of young kids go through burnout when they're getting better and better and better. I coach a couple 14-year-olds that are actually both in Pennsylvania right now playing the VNEA Nationals. So good luck to Hank the Tank and Ed Vondrell. So, but anyway, what I told them too is it's like in the beginning they see improvement. And what happens is when the road starts getting tougher and starts becoming tougher for them to see improvement is when they can start getting burned out and feeling like, man, I'm burned out. It's just too hard. And the reason they feel burned out is because they're addicted to output and they're not getting, and it's getting harder and harder to get output. So they're like, man, and I'm not saying they're burned out. I'm just saying it's easy for someone to get burned out because burnout is a sign that you're kind of like focusing on output and it's getting discouraging how hard you have to work to get more output. And the answer is really easy, which is let go of it and just enjoy the work. And if you need to, get a pedal assist.
Exactly.
That's all I got, man.
It's good stuff.
So yeah, if anybody has any questions that they would like ranted about wildly for an hour on the podcast, send them at info@mnpoolbootcamp.com.
And this is our last podcast, and we're happy.
It was a good run.
It was
man.
a good run, and
yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Yeah, and then is there anything else like miscellaneous? I've had some. No, I think we're good. Do you have anything closing thoughts?
No, we're good, man. So,
all right.
Thanks for sharing your thoughts, Tim.
Oh, you too, Josh. Thanks for being here. So, all right, and we're